The world of Avaris had once been a land of endless summer, where golden fields stretched beneath a sky perpetually kissed by the sun. Now it lay under a thick shroud of snow and ice, the warmth long forgotten. The castle of Frosthaven, once the seat of a prosperous kingdom, now stood encased in an eternal blizzard, its towering battlements guarded by formidable ice-golems. The winds howled through the frozen towers, carrying with them the lament of a world lost to the cruel grasp of winter. Amidst this desolation, a lone figure trudged through the snow, her breath crystallizing in the frigid air. Bryndis, a warrior of unmatched skill and unyielding resolve, her purpose as cold and sharp as the blade she carried. Bryndis had traveled far to reach Frosthaven, driven by whispers of an ancient curse that had plunged the world into eternal winter. Her journey had taken her across frozen wastelands, through treacherous mountain passes, and into the heart of the storm that surrounded the castle. The tales spoke of a power hidden deep within its icy walls, a power that could either save the world or doom it to perpetual cold. With each step, Bryndis felt the weight of her quest pressing down on her, but her resolve never wavered. She knew that whatever awaited her within Frosthaven, it was her destiny to confront it. The ice-golems, silent sentinels of the castle, stirred as Bryndis approached the gates. They were massive constructs, formed from the very essence of winter itself, their eyes glowing with an eerie blue light. Each one was a guardian, bound to protect the secrets of the castle with their lives, or whatever semblance of life they possessed. Bryndis knew that she would have to face them if she were to uncover the truth behind the eternal winter. As she prepared for battle, she couldn't help but wonder what force could command such powerful creatures. What could be so dangerous that it required an army of ice to keep it hidden? As the first ice golem lumbered forward, Bryndis gripped her sword tightly, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The battle was fierce, each clash of steel against ice echoing through the frozen courtyard. Despite their immense strength, the ice golems were no match for Bryndis's skill and determination. One by one they fell before her, shattering into countless shards that glittered like stars in the cold light. Yet, even as she vanquished her foes, Bryndis knew that this was only the beginning. The true challenge lay ahead, deep within the heart of Frosthaven. With the ice golems defeated, Bryndis stood before the entrance to the castle, a massive door carved from ancient wood and reinforced with iron. The air around her was thick with the weight of forgotten memories and lingering dread. She hesitated for a moment, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Somewhere within these walls lay the source of the eternal winter, a source she had sworn to find and destroy. Steeling herself for what was to come, Bryndis pushed open the door and stepped into the darkness beyond, the icy wind following close behind her. As Bryndis stepped into the castle, the temperature seemed to drop even further, the cold biting at her skin despite her thick furs. The darkness within was almost complete, broken only by the occasional flicker of blue light emanating from cracks in the ice-covered walls. Each step echoed through the deserted corridors, the silence almost oppressive. Yet Bryndis pushed forward, her resolve unwavering. She could feel a presence, something ancient and powerful, lurking deep within the heart of the castle. The air was thick with the weight of untold centuries, and with each passing moment, Bryndis knew she was drawing closer to the source of the eternal winter. It wasn't long before she encountered the first of the castle's inhabitants, spectral figures trapped in the ice, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and agony. These were the souls of those who had once lived in Frosthaven, their bodies long gone, but their spirits bound to the frozen walls. They whispered to Bryndis as she passed, their voices like the rustling of dead leaves, warning her to turn back before it was too late. But Bryndis would not be swayed. She knew the danger, but she also knew that there was no turning back. The world was counting on her, and she would not fail. Deeper into the castle, Bryndis found herself in what had once been a grand hall, now filled with twisted ice sculptures that resembled people caught in a moment of panic. The frost on the walls glowed with an unnatural light, casting eerie shadows that danced around her. It was here that she encountered Liv, a warrior like herself, but one who had been trapped within the castle for what seemed like an eternity. Liv's body was encased in ice, but her eyes remained alive, filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. With great effort, Bryndis managed to free Liv from her icy prison, the two warriors now united in their quest. As they moved deeper into the castle, Bryndis and Liv came upon a massive chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, and its floor covered in a thick layer of frost. In the center of the room stood a single figure, Skadi, a guardian of the old ways, her very essence intertwined with the ice that surrounded her. Skadi's eyes glowed with an ethereal light, and her voice was as cold as the wind outside. She spoke of the child that had brought the eternal winter, a being of unimaginable power who had been both a blessing and a curse. Skadi's words were filled with regret, and she warned Bryndis and Liv that the choice they would soon face would test them in ways they could not yet understand. The path ahead was treacherous, the ice beneath their feet cracking ominously with each step. The closer they got to the heart of the castle, the more they could feel the immense power radiating from within. Bryndis could sense the presence of the child, a being whose very existence was a paradox, a source of life and death, creation and destruction. As they approached the final door, Bryndis knew that the moment of truth was near. The fate of the world rested on their shoulders, and the decision they would make would change everything. With Liv and Skadi by her side, Bryndis pushed open the door, ready to face whatever lay beyond. As Bryndis, Liv and Skadi stepped into the inner sanctum of the castle, the cold seemed to intensify, as if the very air was alive with malevolent intent. The chamber they entered was vast, its walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting the rise and fall of ancient empires, all now lost beneath the eternal snow. At the center of the room stood a throne of ice, and upon it sat a small figure, shrouded in shadows. The child was barely more than a silhouette, yet the power that radiated from them was palpable, a force that made the very walls tremble. Bryndis knew without a doubt that this was the source of the eternal winter, the Iceborn, a being of unimaginable power. The child's eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, met Bryndis's gaze, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. In those eyes, Bryndis saw not only the power to command the storm, but also a deep and abiding loneliness. The child had been alone for so long, burdened with a power they could not control, a power that had brought the world to its knees. Skadi stepped forward, her voice soft, but filled with the weight of ages. She spoke of the child's origins, of a prophecy that foretold of one who would bring either salvation or destruction. The Iceborn was both the last hope and the greatest threat to the world, and now the choice lay in Bryndis's hands. Bryndis felt the weight of her sword as she stepped closer to the child, Liv and Skadi watching in silence. The child made no move to defend themselves, their expression one of resignation. They knew what was coming, and in their eyes, Bryndis saw a reflection of her own doubts and fears. The warrior's heart wavered, torn between the duty she had sworn to uphold and the empathy she felt for this lonely, powerful being. The child was not a monster, but a victim of circumstances beyond their control. Yet the world was dying, and Bryndis knew that she might be the only one who could stop it. In that moment, the castle itself seemed to come alive, the ice groaning and shifting as if reacting to Bryndis's inner turmoil. The walls pulsed with a cold blue light, and the wind howled through the corridors, carrying with it the voices of the past. Bryndis could hear the echoes of those who had come before her, warriors who had failed in their quest to end the eternal winter. She could feel their presence, urging her to finish what they could not. But there was something else too, a whisper, soft and barely audible, telling her that there was another way, a path that did not end in bloodshed. Bryndis stood before the child, her sword raised, the final decision looming over her like a dark cloud. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders, every breath a struggle against the cold that had seeped into her very soul. But as she looked into the child's eyes, she saw not just power, but hope. A flicker of warmth in the midst of the freezing storm. It was a hope that had been buried deep, forgotten by all but the most ancient of beings. In that instant, Bryndis knew what she had to do. Lowering her sword, she reached out to the child, her voice firm but kind. "I choose life," she said. And in that moment, the storm began to break. As Bryndis lowered her sword and extended her hand toward the child, the castle seemed to release a long-held breath. The icy walls, once alive with a menacing energy, began to crack and crumble, the oppressive cold retreating like a shadow at dawn. The child hesitated for a moment, their glowing eyes searching Bryndis's face for any sign of deceit. But all they found was a warmth that had been absent from their world for far too long. Slowly, the child placed their small hand in Bryndis's, and the connection between them sparked a chain reaction that rippled through the very foundation of Frosthaven. Liv and Skadi watched in silence as the throne of ice began to melt, the water pooling at the child's feet. The once impenetrable walls of the castle started to fracture, beams of sunlight breaking through the cracks for the first time in centuries. Outside, the eternal blizzard that had raged around the castle began to dissipate, the swirling snowflakes thinning out until they were nothing more than a gentle flurry. The skies above, long obscured by dark clouds, slowly cleared to reveal a brilliant blue sky. It was as if the world itself was waking from a long and terrible nightmare. As the ice melted away, revealing the stone beneath, the spectral figures that had been trapped within the walls were finally released. They emerged as wisps of light, their faces now serene and free from the torment that had once held them captive. With a sense of profound relief, Bryndis watched as these spirits ascended toward the heavens, their voices no longer filled with warnings and fear, but with gratitude and peace. Liv and Skadi, too, felt the weight of the castle's curse lift from their shoulders, the cold that had seeped into their bones replaced by a growing warmth. Yet, even as the world around them began to heal, Bryndis knew that the journey was not yet over. The child still held immense power, and that power needed to be guided, nurtured, and understood. It would be a long and arduous path, one filled with challenges and uncertainties. But Bryndis was no longer alone in this endeavor. With Liv and Skadi by her side, and the child now under her protection, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would seek out the knowledge needed to control the child's power and ensure that the world would never again fall into such darkness. As the last remnants of the ice castle melted away, revealing a fertile landscape that had been hidden for so long, Bryndis, Liv, and Skadi stood at the edge of a new beginning. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was also filled with hope. A hope that had been rekindled by a single act of compassion. The child, once feared as the bringer of endless winter, now walked hand in hand with Bryndis, their bond unbreakable. The world had been given a second chance, and Bryndis was determined to protect it, no matter what challenges lay ahead. With the sun shining down on them, they set out toward the horizon, ready to face whatever the future might hold. With the castle of Frosthaven now reduced to ruins, and the eternal winter broken, Bryndis, Liv, and Skadi stood at the dawn of a new era. The once frozen landscape around them had begun to thaw, revealing rich soil and the promise of life where there had only been desolation. The sun, now shining brightly in a clear blue sky, felt warm against their skin, a warmth that had been absent for far too long. The journey had been harrowing, and the scars it left would not easily fade. But Bryndis knew that they had done what needed to be done. The world had been given a second chance, and it was up to them to ensure that it was not squandered. The child, now free from the burden of their unimaginable power, walked hand in hand with Bryndis, their expression one of wonder and curiosity. For the first time in their life, they felt the warmth of the sun, the gentle breeze against their face, and the softness of the earth beneath their feet. They looked up at Bryndis with a mix of gratitude and trust, knowing that this warrior had chosen to save them when others might have chosen a darker path. Bryndis smiled down at the child, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and hope for the future. They were no longer alone, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they began their journey away from the ruins of Frosthaven, Bryndis could not help but reflect on the choices she had made. The path she had taken had been fraught with danger and uncertainty, but it had also been filled with moments of profound connection and growth. Liv and Skadi, her steadfast companions, had proven to be invaluable allies, and the bond they shared had only deepened through their trials. The three of them had forged a new family, one built not by blood, but by shared experiences and a mutual commitment to the greater good. The world beyond Frosthaven was vast and unknown, but it was also filled with potential. Bryndis knew that the child's power, while no longer a threat, still needed to be understood and controlled. They would seek out the ancient knowledge of the world, learning from those who had walked the path of magic before them. The journey would be long, and the road ahead uncertain, but Bryndis felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had chosen life, and in doing so she had set in motion a series of events that would shape the future of the world for generations to come. As they disappeared into the horizon, the sun setting behind them in a blaze of colour, Bryndis, Liv, Skadi and the child left behind the ruins of the past. They were not just survivors of the eternal winter, they were its guardians, entrusted with the task of ensuring that such a tragedy would never occur again. The future was theirs to shape, and with each step they took, they carried with them the lessons of their journey. In the distance, the first signs of new life began to emerge, green shoots pushing up through the thawing earth, a symbol of hope and renewal. The eternal winter was over, but their story had only just begun.